Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. And there's me thinking I'd finished with repotting for a while, but there's a story. There's a guy that lives in the block of flats where my daughter lives, whose flat windows were full of orchids. So they sort of became friends and bumped into each other in passing and things like that. Well, long story short, the guy recently had a stroke and he's died. And my daughter inherited some of his orchids on the grounds that the rest of the family didn't want them. And guess which ones they didn't want? Yes, it was the Cymbidiums. Now I've managed to shift the large ones because I don't really want them. And my daughter can't look after them where she lives, so they had to go. So I took some along to one of the orchid societies I belong to and got rid of the 4 big ones. One of them's going in the trash, in the bin, because it's not really recoverable. It's in a very sorry state. And I was going to do the same with this one, and then I thought, well, as there's a sort of friendship and a bit of history involved, it might be nice for my daughter to know that one of the guy's plants is actually still with us, if you see what I mean. So I'm going to do my best to sort this Cymbidium out. Now I know 2 things about Cymbidiums: nothing and bugger all. So when in doubt, go and find out. Now luckily it was my Orchid Society meeting last night, so I went up to a couple of good friends and just asked a few questions, and I got the answer that I like from one guy, because it's my answer when somebody asked me when's the best time to repot my orchid, and he gave exactly the answer I would have given: when the plant tells you to. And I said, okay, fine, I don't know anything about Cymbidiums, so how does a Cymbidium tell me when it needs repotting? He said under normal circumstances, the majority of the plants, when the new growths are sort of 2 to 4 inches long, they'll start pushing out new roots under that growth, and that's a good time to catch them. So hang on, let's just do paraphernalia. Essential coffees, obviously. Unicorn juice, scissors. I'm going to need them because a lot of these roots are going to get hacked. And the one thing I do know about Cymbidiums, they don't mind their roots being hacked. They branch like hell, and they have really sturdy root systems that push out at a rate of knots. So I have no worries about trimming the roots. So that, standing in the 70% rubbing alcohol ready. I'm going to need that in a minute. I mean the scissors, not the alcohol. That came out wrong. And then I have my hydrogen peroxide, 3%, in my little spray bottle. And this is now empty, and that's all I've got left. This guy only grew indoors, so in theory there's nothing really wrong in this pot. There shouldn't be any nasties in there, anything that leaves slimy little trails or anything, but just to be sure. Now another thing, this guy was his expression, he was a natural grower. In other words, he never cut off dead leaves, he never cut off old flower spikes, he never removed old pseudo bulbs, and hardly ever repotted. He just let his plants do their own thing. That's what he liked to do. I'm afraid I couldn't do that. I like to be a bit tidier. So I don't know how long this thing's been in this pot. I don't know what sort of root system I'm going to find, but whatever it is, it's probably going to get a spray. And I know this is going to make a hell of a mess. I've already made my mind up, and I wish I hadn't watered it yesterday, if I'd sort of thought ahead. What I will need is very big chunky bark, and I'm going to use that for crocking, not to plant it in. And I have a Cymbidium pot. Now as you can see, these are deeper than a normal pot and don't get so thin as they go down towards the bottom, so they're more like a tube. Cymbidiums like deep pots. They are mainly terrestrials, or at best semi-terrestrials. I do believe there are a few epiphytes in amongst the species, but I don't even know what this is. It's a no ID, so I haven't got a flipping clue. All I know is that by the leaf size on the old bulbs, it's not a giant. Somewhere between a miniature and a medium-sized one, which I think I might be able to get away with looking after. So anyway, a Cymbidium pot. Up until now, the only thing these have been used for is to stand other pots on at shows. And they work well for that. Anyway, that's my pot. I've got chunky bark, and in amongst my bark, size of my bark that I'm going to pot it in is yet to be determined until I see the root system. It's either going to be small bark or a mixture of small and medium, depending on the root sizes, but it will have some sponge rock in. While I'm at it, a big thank you. This was sent by Karina. Her YouTube channel is Fifi. There's a lot of fifs. But thank you very much for that. She sent me 2 bags of that, and this is going to get some use now. Right, let's make a mess. As I say, I haven't got a clue what I'm going to find in this pot. It's a little adventure. Here we go then. Let's see if I can get it out, of course. These have a habit of really clinging on. I've seen people divide cymbidiums with wood saws, where they've actually sawn the plant into 4. And one of those I actually saw a year later, and that division had actually trebled its root size. Its root ball had trebled in size in a year. They really do grow at a rate of knots. Are you going to come out or not? Come on. As I said, I haven't got a clue how long this has even been in here. Oh. Well, there's a couple hanging out the bottom. If I get rid of them, that'll help. As I said, I have no qualms about losing some roots on this, because I know cymbidiums will push them out again fast. Hell's bells. I'm seriously trying to grab the whole plant and not damage that new growth. Gotcha. Whew. Mussels. I'd forgotten I had a couple of them. Right, so the good news is no creepy crawlies that are visible. All I can see. That's good. Get that out of the way. I don't know why on earth I'm washing my hands. I'm just about to get them absolutely filthy. Okay, right, as root systems go, see what I mean? Extensive, jam-packed, solid. And that looks like the last time it was potted it was in dirt. Anyway, this is going to take a wee bit of cleaning up, and I may be some time. But just so as we're on the sort of same track, round the back of the plant we have what is just dead sheaths. We've got a very old pseudo bulb here that's still got 2 leaves on it. There's another old pseudo bulb here with a single leaf on it. I class those as back bulbs even though they've got a couple of leaves left on them, and I will keep them on the plant. And then round the front of the plant, because this has obviously crept across the plant right up to the edge, I've got quite a good bulb here, quite a good bulb here. That would be the older one of the 2, looking at it. Yeah, all these sheaths are coming off, they're hidey places. And then I have this new growth, which hopefully that shows up. And I mean, it's got a good root system, a lot of which is just about to come off. So I will give this a clean up, and we'll see what's left at the end of it. And I'll clear some of the mess away as well before we repot. Right, now how am I supposed to turn my camera off? Oh, I hate getting in a mess. Right, be back soon, as they say. See what I mean there? Jesus Christ. An extensive root system, and believe it or not, most of these roots are actually alive. They're not actually dead. It's a hell of a root system for what appears to be quite a small plant. But there again, it's probably been in that pot a very, very long time, and there would be no reason really for the roots to die off being undisturbed. So, but I am going to trim it nonetheless. I'm going to thin it out, and I'm going to pick on roots like that to keep, that have already branched in several directions and that I haven't damaged trying to get the See, these are relatively new roots here. They haven't branched yet. This is the halfway stage, basically. This has got most of the what was basically dirt, polystyrene chips. There was remnants of bark in there. God knows what that is. It looks like a peanut husk. Anyway, I'll tidy up. It is a peanut husk. Oh dear. Some people's ideas may work, I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to trim up because basically it ain't going to go in there. And they don't mind their roots being chopped. So it is about to get severely hacked, thinned out into a sort of nice, this type of root system, which has got plenty of branches on. Each branch will then push out and possibly branch again and form a new extensive root system in some nice new media, and then I can give it a hell of a feed and water during the summer months. I'm probably going to put it outside, shady spot but bright light and all that. Feed and water well through the summer, get this new growth to really push on and mature, and then cool it down. It stays outside in the autumn until such time as the nighttime temperatures start getting a bit iffy and getting a bit too low. And then if it's an odd cool spell, it can just go in the grow room overnight for those nights. And then if we get a slightly warmer spell where the night temperatures aren't expected to drop quite so much, it can go back out for a while again. And you keep doing this until such time as you think, actually, if I leave it out tonight, I'm probably going to kill it. So at that point, it comes in from the winter. And by then, the bulbs will have hardened off. It should be a nice mature plant. And that chilling effect in the autumn is what induces the spikes. Now, whether I get a spike or not, I don't know. But if I go through the motions, at least I stand a chance. Right, stage 2, the root hacking. I'll be back. Hi. Right, good news and bad news. I've cleaned up the sheaths. There's a bit of good news. There's an eye there, if not two. So we may get another new growth out that side. I always tend to clean up sheaths around the growth areas. One, because bugs hide in there, and two, because it gets the roots going. It stops them being hindered in any way. And I mean, I've cut off, look, well over half the roots, and I've still got a good root system. But out the back of the plant was like a stump sticking out, which I thought I'd cut off. That is not funny. That's the dreaded purple ring. So this has Fusarium. Where's the stump? It's easier to... Yeah, I'll see. You can see it quite clearly if I get the flipping thing in the right place. Just move it around, make sure the colours show. There was an easy way around that. Bit of extra light. Yay! But yeah, there is Fusarium in this plant. Now what I'm going to do, because for my daughter's memories of the guy, I might keep it anyway, but what I'm going to do now is the main part of this plant is these two bulbs and the new growth. These two back bulbs would help support that plant, but not if they've got Fusarium in their base. Simply because any nutrients or anything that would try and pass from those old bulbs into the front of the plant would be blocked by the spores. So they wouldn't really work. They wouldn't do any good. So I'm going to take the risk and cut in through here and in through here and get these two back bulbs off and see if we've got any pretty colours in there. If we have, I may still take the risk of keeping this plant separate, watering it separately, bearing in mind it's going to spend part of its life outside and not even in my grow room. So let's get the heavy duty stuff and see what we can do. Butchery. But you never know, we might be lucky and it might not have got the whole plant yet. There is a downside to this. I gave 4 of these plants to somebody else. I shall now have to go and tell those people they need to be extremely cautious. Okay, right, you can see there is still coloration. Those 2 bulbs were on the same rhizome, so there was only a very thin rhizome connecting into this front part of the plant. Very thin compared with that big stumpy bit. And we still have purple in there. So now if I keep this plant, I take a risk. So all I can do is keep it separate. And I've got a systemic fungicide basically, which in a process of spraying will infest the plant with its killing properties, and whatever fusarium is in there will be killed, so it will become inactive. Unfortunately, I'm not sure that that treatment would kill the spores, and it's the spores that block the pathways, not the actual disease itself. So I take a risk even keeping it, but I'd still like to give it a go. As we know, some plants can fight through it, and they just seem to grow away from it, and it's normally plants that grow at a hell of a rate that seem to be able to cope with it better. And Cymbidiums, when they get a hold, are one of those types of plants that grow at a hell of a rate. I mean, there's another flipping virus that affects the Cymbidiums badly, but this one hasn't got that, but it has got fusarium. So I'm going to pot it up anyway, yeah? And I'm going to see how it does. It'll get watered separately, it'll get kept away from other plants so it doesn't touch, and it will get a systemic fungicide sprayed over the whole plant, root system and all, yeah? Systemic, goes in through tissues and gets right into the centre of the plant. So that's what the roots are going to get sprayed with, rather than hydrogen peroxide, because there's no bugs. No snails, nothing like that. It's a clean plant from that point of view. So I shall have to go and get that, and obviously I can't mess about with that sort of stuff indoors. That's got to go outside, downwind and all that sort of stuff, all the normal precautions. Those sort of chemicals are not to be messed with. I'm not wearing a space suit and all that stuff. I'm not that worried, but I will make sure that it doesn't get anywhere near me, my eyes, my breathing, anything like that, and then thoroughly wash my hands after the plant's dried. So I'll have to do that separately, obviously, and I'll come back when it's potted up. That now seems a big pot for it, but don't worry, it isn't. If this is going to fight through the fusarium and win, which I hope it will, there's no reason why it shouldn't. These 2 bulbs look good, but we'll see how we go. You never know, it could last a couple of months and just keel over. But it's worth a try. I'll give it a try. And not really for my sake. I've already explained that. We'll see how we go. Be back soon. Okay, we're back. Plant's not quite dry yet, but I'll remember to wash my hands. Another idea, a good habit to get into. You sterilise your tools before you start, yes? Well, I sterilise mine, and in this case this is pretty damn important, after I've used them as well. Now that removes the easy temptation of just picking up your pruning scissors to snip a couple of plants in the middle of watering and forgetting to sterilise them. So at least next time I pick up these to use them, I know they're clean. That way if I have a senior moment, shall we call it, I don't pass on anything and I don't do any harm. So, especially in cases like this, sterilise before and after, and de-risk passing anything on with your cutting tools, which is one of the main ways, quite honestly, that stuff gets passed from one plant to another, or at least stuff like this. Okay. Right, I've decided to stick with medium bark. My medium bark has got some smaller pieces in it, but my advice was, if it's quite a fine root system, you excuse the bits of moss in there, that was left over from last time, a little bit won't hurt. The advice was, if it's got quite a fine root system, stick to small bark. with some perlite. Well, that's the English word for sponge rock, and in England you can only get the small stuff. But thanks to Karina, I've got the big stuff. So I'm going to stick with the medium bark because this has a reasonable root system. And looking at this root system again in a little bit more detail, it has got some active growing root tips, which implies that that nasty stuff has not got throughout the whole plant yet. Because one of the sure signs is your roots just stop growing, they just deteriorate, and you don't get any new root growth, you don't get any branching, so that's one of the signs. So yeah, I think while I'm here I'm just going to put a bit of cinnamon on that cut, as it's going to be buried in the media. Wet finger, there we go. I know that's in my spice cupboard, but it only gets used for the plants. Just a touch of that on that cut rhizome. That's that done before I forget. And I'm going to set this quite far back in the pot, and I'm going to pot it reasonably high and towards the back. Obviously the new growth is going to come out from round here if I ever get any, yeah? So by potting it towards the back, it can stay in there a nice long time. So push it over that way to start with. I've already put some of the chunky bark in the bottom. But the reason for that really is to stop any finer pieces gradually getting washed down as you water over the months and maybe years. And gradually the smaller pieces can work their way down, and they can actually block up the drainage holes. So by having some chunky stuff at the bottom, it hopefully stops that happening. That is my theory. Now luckily with a nice open root system like this, there's not a lot of wiggling needs to be done, because quite honestly the bark just finds its own way into in between all the roots and all the crevices. And as I've said, this plant is now over potted, but it doesn't matter. If it's going to grow, it's going to grow at a pretty good rate. I knew I wouldn't have enough. Let's just mix a bit more. So every now and again I'm picking out pieces of wood that are obviously not bark. It's no big deal if they stayed in there, quite honestly, but while we're at it, keep it tidy. And one thing I do need to make sure is that the base of the plant is in contact with the media. That way, as soon as the roots come out, they've got something to get hold of. So that little bit of wiggling is quite important. Set it down in there. Last little bit on the top. Now I'm going to pop this slightly high. I don't want to bury those the base of those pseudo bulbs until I see some new root growth. And if I don't see any new root growth for a while, I shall probably take it out of its pot and have another look and see if the damage was really fixed or not. And if not, I'm afraid, Sunshine, you'll be going in the trash. But I'm willing to give it a go, if not for my sake, for somebody else's. Right, good bash. Settle that right down in. And that, I think, is going to do. I'm not even sure if it's going to make it or not, but we will see. So there we go. As I said, slightly over potted, and a narrower pot would have been better, but if this is going to make it, the roots are going to push out at a colossal rate, and they will fill that pot very quickly. They don't grow like other orchids. The roots really do go at a hell of a pace. I had a Cymbidium once before. It was a species that I saw at a show, and then one came up on eBay, so I thought I'll have a go at that. And when I opened it, there was a little note in there and said, very sorry, but the roots weren't as good as I thought they were, because he posted it bare rooted, so he unpotted it. And to apologise, he sent me 2 free little seedlings from a very, very well-known hybridiser. Unfortunately, they didn't have any names on. But that plant grew incredibly fast as far as the root system was concerned, so I have seen what they can do. And in the end I decided I wasn't going to keep it, and I did our chairman a favour, because the reason I bought that one in the first place is I saw his at a show which was absolutely stunning. So I thought, I want one of those, got one, grew it for a while. It never bloomed for me, but it grew well. And I decided I don't want Cymbidium, so I took it in to sell it, and the chairman collared me before I even got to the sales table, and he said, what's that Cymbidium? I said, I've forgotten what the name was. And he said, are you selling it? I said, yes. He said, what do you want for it? I will pay you anything you like because I've lost mine. So it went full circle. He put the idea in my head, I got one, I grew it on, he bought it back and replaced one that he'd lost. That's what orchid societies are for. They do things like that. Okay, so totally separate from everything else. Don't share any water, although I don't do so much of that nowadays. And keep my eye on it. And if this new growth stalls and doesn't push out any new roots, then the chances are it's gone too far. But if that new growth pushes on at a rate of knots and pushes out a load of new roots, it could grow through the disease, and even though the old part of the plant's still got it, it's dead, so it can't spread anymore. That's the theory, which means all of the new growth comes out clean. But you've got to keep on top of it. Fusarium is a fungus and it does produce spores, and obviously those spores can reinfect. So that's had a systemic fungicide put on it. It'll get treated again at the appropriate interval. It'll probably get treated for a third time again at that appropriate interval. The idea being that if any spores are produced, they get killed as well. And eventually it's in there, but it's dead. That's the important thing. So there we go, a no ID Cymbidium that I'm really keeping for somebody else, but you know, given the story, I thought it was worth a go. Okay, thanks for dropping by. I'm sure some of you are wondering what the hell's happened to the plant giveaway draw. Well, the plant giveaway draw is either one of my Berryodas or a store-bought surprise plant, which I haven't been and got yet. It's Saturday today, it's just after lunch. I may go out this afternoon and get that sorted. If not, I'll do it tomorrow, and I'll hopefully film the draw tomorrow afternoon. But the downside of being relatively popular is, by hell have I got a lot of names to write down and put in a hat. Thank you, people. Anyway, I'll film the draw as soon as I'm ready to do it and I've got the plants. Okay, thanks for dropping by. I'm not sure you will have learnt much because I don't know much about these things, but the little bits I know I've tried to pass on. Okay, so you've had a bit of culture, you've seen what a root system looks like on a Cymbidium, you've had another look at what Fusarium looks like. We could all really do without that, couldn't we? What dope put that on this planet? What purpose does that serve? Huh. Okay, see you again next time. Thanks for watching.